Hey, welcome to Select Arcane. It's been a while since I've done any finish work, but here we go. This is a micro tadpole by Kylie Parks of Studio Thornrose, and he's been sitting on my shelf for quite a while, and I've been terrified to paint him. But here he is, all prepped, sitting on a piece of foam tape, ready for paint. Here's the concept. I'm going to be doing a plain black Shetland pony, and I already have his name picked out, Peppercorn. He's just so small and round and spicy. So I'm going to be painting him exclusively in oils, with a little bit of mixed media like acrylics and pencils, and let's get started. I have a preference for Gamblin oils, but I also use Winsor & Newton. Either works for me because they're both buttery and soft, and I'm cutting them both with linseed oil. For the base layer, I'm mixing together burnt umber, yellow ochre, and white. This is going to give me a decent foundation for a bay or black horse, and I'm going to be using this color to my advantage for the lighter areas later on. As you can see, I'm using a relatively small brush and just dabbing it all over the horse. He's going to be one solid color technically, so he's just going to get covered head to toe. And then I follow up with a clean, fluffier brush and just rub all that paint all over him, but also pull the extra off of him. This brush is called a mop brush, and it's going to mop up all the extra paint and eliminate the brush strokes. Any stray lint or hairs, I just pluck off as I go. And then I put them in my drying cabinet to dry for a few days. You'll notice that layer 2 just flew by and now we're in layer 3. What's up with that? For layer 2, I did the exact same thing as layer 1. This just gives me a better foundation to start from. Now for layer 3, we're going to be darkening up his base coat because he is going to be a black pony. But black isn't black, even if the pony is a true black. There still has to be some blue or brown highlights somewhere. So my paint mixture is burnt umber again, black, and a little bit of yellow ochre, like a minuscule amount. I take the paint over his top line, rump, barrel, neck, a little bit of his face, but I'm intentionally avoiding areas like the muzzle, around the eyes, and the belly. Again, he's going to be true black, but I want these areas to be just a tiny bit lighter to add a little bit more depth and definition. Peppercorn looks like a hot mess now, but wait until a few more layers in. In layer 4, we're eliminating yellow ochre and just doing burnt umber and black. From this point on, you're going to start to see a lot of dark bay heading into black. It's slow going because oils are semi-translucent. We're picking up those colors from those base layers that we created while putting the new layer on. At the moment, he's just where I want him to be, not too red, not too green, so we're just going to continue forward. You're going to notice at this point that I'm intentionally leaving out the muzzle, the eyes, the belly, and the flanks. He's heading into bay territory, if anything. Yep, I know, I got it. When we go over these areas again in the next layer or two, there's going to be a lot more definition because there's going to be two different tones going on. That's what I hope anyways. I started layer 5 the next day. It really just depends on how hot my studio gets with the drying times, and because I essentially am cold-blooded, it's always pretty hot, so I sometimes am able to swing an oils layer the next day. But in layer 5, we're seeing the exact same thing, more black, more burnt umber. And at this point, he's looking like a very, very sexy dark bay, am I right? But nowhere near black, so let's chat about that. I'm going to be attempting a different technique than I've ever done before. And it recently occurred to me that virtually all the custom micros I do are black horses. Oops, I'm so sorry. I guess I should do some other colors on my channel. But what I'm doing for Peppercorn here is going to be called glazing. And once his bay gets to where I want it to be, I'm going to glaze in black. Essentially taking black or a really, really, really dark brown that I'm doing now, adding a ton of linseed oil, and going over the entire horse. That essentially puts like a curtain over him and makes him black, but keeps all of those bay tones that we've been building up this entire time. It's something that the old masters of oil painting have done for centuries. I learned it in art school when I was doing my bachelor's, but this is the first time I'm exercising this on a model horse. But first things first, we're going to just keep on building up those base layers. We're not there yet. With layer 6, there's no change. I'm still going darker and darker and darker. But with layer 7, there's starting to be some progress. I'm adding more black and gray tones to the muzzle, the eyes, and the flank area. And I'm adding the most minimum amount of burnt umber to the body color. Now I think you can start to see that we're in a very, very, very dark bay, maybe heading towards seal brown. I'm an excruciatingly slow painter, and we're up multiple weeks now for this little micro. And could you imagine if he was traditional? This would just take me years. But so far so good. I'm happy with where he's at. Layer 8 is where the glazing begins. I'm taking straight ivory black and diluting it down with linseed oil. The paint is so thin and transparent, you're really not going to notice it when it's applied. I spread it all over the model, doing the exact same thing, application, and then mopping it up with a small brush. If I was going to make Peppercorn a seal brown, by the way, what I would have done is done the same technique, but keep all of those nice little tan points around the muzzle, the flank, the belly, etc. But because he's going to be solid black, I'm doing it all over. I also really make sure to get into the creases and crevices, making sure I don't miss anything. And now that he's fully glazed, you can see he's considerably darker than when we started, but he also has that dark, dark coffee coloring underneath. Because there's so much oil on his coat now, I have to wait extra long for him to cure and dry. For layer 9, I'm redoing the black glaze. As you can see, Peppercorn's a nice dark bay, quite handsome actually. And if this was the color I was going for, I would have kept it. But nope, he's going to be black. So I just repeat layer 8, and you're going to notice in a moment that, he's black. For layer 10, I change gears, and I'm pushing to deepen the black. I'm mixing ivory black, went back to burnt umber, but this time I'm adding cobalt violet hue. Basically mostly black, more purple, and very, very, very little burnt umber. I mix those with linseed oil, and I only hit the darkest points of his body, along his top line, his legs, a little bit of his barrel, his shoulders, around his face. And as I blend it in, you can see suddenly he just became a different horse. We'll see how he dries, but this might be it for the oils. I just want to point out that I create my videos in real time, so I actually don't know what happens next. It's so that you can follow the progress along in real time. I did decide that layer 10 wasn't it, so I'm going back in with straight ivory black and the violet cobalt hue. I'm omitting burnt umber this time. I repeat the steps as layer 10, just going over the top line, across the barrel, the shoulders, the haunches, etc. I just really want to deepen this black, and my current skills don't really let me get there with 100% oils. So I'll be switching gears and going into mixed media in the next layer. But for now, he's going to need some time to dry because he has a lot of oil on him. That drying time took over 2 weeks, and in that time we got our first big blizzard, which also halted progress because the snow kept blowing in through the door whenever I would open it. So forget about spraying. But finally, on a slightly less windy day, but equally as cold, I was finally able to spray him. Now, admittedly, I started Peppercorn at the end of September. I actually started him before Senior Carrots, which is why I have references to Peppercorn in Senior Carrots' video. But, you know, life happened, work happened, Stranger Things 5 happened, and I had to rewatch all of Stranger Things. So yeah, Peppercorn took a back seat and we ended up in December. So when I finally caught up to Season 5, Volume 1, I returned to this pony and went in with the watercolors. I'm using Derwent watercolor pencils. I just use a tiny brush, wet the pencil a little bit with the brush, and then apply it to the pony. And it doesn't really matter if I add too much because then I just go in with straight water and kind of rub it around. Basically, I wasn't happy with the base color that it wasn't black enough. So I went in with straight black to darken up those areas. But as you can see, it wasn't exactly overpowering, and the oils actually shine through because the watercolors are semi-transparent in parts that I add more water. A little hard to explain, and I'm sorry it's a little hard to see. But once I wasn't able to apply any more pigment, I went out and sealed again with Testors Dullcote. In layer 14, I did the exact same thing, and previously I put a layer down for the hooves, and in layer 14 I went in and detailed the hooves further. I also took him off his little pedestal and started working on his belly because I really couldn't access that originally. Going forward, I'm definitely going to be using this method to paint micros, but it doesn't allow me to get into those hard to reach places until I take him off. Anyways, once I'm happy with the watercolors here, I go out and spray again in Testors Dullcote. In layer 15, I pull out my tiniest brush. I add details to the hooves, the nose, the eyeballs, and I also low light anything that I missed. For these details, I'm still using watercolors and I've skipped acrylics entirely. I find they're just too thick for these tiny little micros. But here we are. There's just a few more things to finish up, like the underside of the hooves, but Peppercorn is essentially done. It took from the end of September to nearly Christmas to finish this tiny pony. And I admit, he's not my best black in existence. But I'm proud I got him done. This is my last video of 2025, and I hope you've enjoyed all the videos this year. As you can see, Peppercorn is getting ready to be put into Christmas dinner, and what is Christmas dinner without the proper amount of seasoning? If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You can follow me on Instagram @SelectArcane or on Facebook by the same name. Thank you so much, and have a very Merry Christmas.